Like that.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales, and we're still here at the Arcview event in Miami, Florida. Again, so many great people here. My next guest today, we're going to have to cut this one short because I know she has to run and get on stage, but she was nice enough to sit down with us before you absolutely did that. You're actually going for something really cool. So let me welcome Jill Scher from Marcum into the show. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And I appreciate you joining us before you're about to, you're judging the pitch competition, correct?
I am announcing the winner of the.
Oh, you get to do the fun
I
thing.
get to do the fun thing.
Very cool. Did they give you an envelope?
They give me an envelope, and I have a little suspense, and then
Drum roll,
yeah,
of course.
I make it very dramatic, a lot of anticipation.
Very cool. So talk to me about Markham. What do you guys do?
So Marcum is an accounting firm. We're based in New York. That's our headquarters.
Makes sense.
We've been around since the 1950s.
Okay.
We're like 70 something years old. We just look really good.
Okay. It's stem cells.
Stem cells, yeah.
Yes.
And we're like somewhere between the 10th and the 15th largest firm in the United States.
Okay.
And our primary areas of practice is really tax and assurance, or doing financial statements.
Okay.
For all industries.
Okay.
In particular, we've been in the cannabis industry for since the days of Colorado, even
beautiful
back from that, and we've never shied away from the industry. Unlike a lot of other firms that are out there, we've always been advocates of the industry and help to these companies that really need a lot of help.
Very cool. That then trust me, everybody in the industry does need a lot of help, especially on the financial side, because it was a cash heavy industry at first. It's easy to count numbers, but when you add taxes, and they're not used to paying taxes in the past. So let me ask you, chicken and the egg. Were you in cannabis before you got to Markham, or did Markham pull you into cannabis?
I was not in cannabis before Marcum. I was not even in that much of it in my own life either.
Got it.
I'm not saying whether I am or not now, but it's very nice product. But I was always in public accounting. And I worked in with corporations and companies and the high net worth individuals doing tax planning and financial planning. I, through a friend, went to a networking event about a year and a half ago only. And it was a cannabis industry event, and they were talking about legalization in New York. And when I walked in the room and I saw that, the people that were there, the attorneys, the people in the industry, the operators, and I was listening to the legislation that was coming out and learning about the plant and all of the issues that these real company entrepreneurs were having, something clicked and I said, I have to get involved in this industry. All of this learning I've done, all of the corporate and mergers and acquisition, tax planning, tax incentive work, and what I've done for other companies is going to be most useful in this particular industry. So that's how it started.
So let me ask the dumb question here, right? So you work with, call it high net worth individuals, family offices, ultra high net worth individuals, which I never understood the difference why we had to add the ultra in there at some point. Can't they just, I call them rich people, but so obviously your goal when you work with those people in those organizations is tax efficiency, right? How do we, listen, folks, it's no secret. Like I was actually shocked when I found out Lori Loughlin couldn't pay for her kids to go to school. I thought that was perfectly legal, but it is no secret that wealthy people like to pay the least amount of taxes they can, and which is good because they're incentivized to give money and do things like that. I imagine that skill set is extremely important in cannabis because of the taxes that they have to pay. Correct. So to be able to find those efficiencies. So where I imagine part of the reason that you thought you can contribute, or that you are contributing here, is you're like, well, I've been doing these for wealthy people. Now I can help companies keep more of their money so they can operate more, because we're at a point now where we probably pay more taxes than any other company in the country.
Absolutely. The effective tax rate of these companies could be 3 to 4 times higher than normal companies.
Yeah.
And also it's fascinating. This industry is fascinating. You have the legislation involved, the science involved, all of the tax laws that come out to support it, and everything else, the way it helps people. I was so passionate about everything I learned that one night that I just dove right in, and that's all I've been focused on. I mean, not all, but mostly all I've been focusing on the last year. And it's really been so rewarding because of all of the problems that are in this industry. and all of the ways that people really have to work together to try to overcome the issues.
Well,
there's so much collaboration.
I talked to somebody earlier today, and they're working on a credit card for the industry. And what I said about that is it's a perfect example of our industry when it has a need. There is a way that an entrepreneur can fill it in this industry. And it's
Absolutely.
obviously Visa, MasterCard, they can't come in. So this industry needs credit. People have the ability to create that from scratch. And that's what I love about this industry is it does support itself. And I love that people like you are coming in from the outside and being like, hey, you guys are doing great. And I'm a big fan of what you're doing, but you can do this better. Right. So obviously we know the biggest issue, I would say, or at least I would assume in federal taxes is 280E. Do companies really have a problem with the state and local level from a tax standpoint? So like I live in Florida, right? I pretty much pay federal tax, which is not why I live here. Luckily, my parents brought me down here when I was 8 and just something to work out. Yeah. So I didn't know that they were saving me on state income tax. I thought they were just wanted the weather, but
just another benefit.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that another time. Come to Miami in July. Come to Miami in July and you tell me if it's good weather. Okay. But yeah, like what are the issues that companies face at maybe state and local level that have really been challenging that you've seen?
So as we know, 280 is a big issue for federal purposes. There's ways.
Is that what got Al Capone?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, well, that's what ultimately was the law that brought him in. Yeah,
got him.
Correct. But 280E, there's ways to mitigate it, by, making sure that your expenses are allocated to the right places, because some expenses may be deductible and some of them may be non-deductible under 280E. So it's really important to refine your expenses to make sure. On the state side, every state is different. So for example, New York State just came out with legislation, and they're decoupling from 280E. So in New York, for federal purposes, you might have, let's say you have $100 of revenue and $20 of expense for a cannabis company. So you have $80 of taxable income, but a normal company may have had $80 of expenses and it would have been $20 of taxable income, right? That's really the difference. When you go to New York and you start with that $80 of taxable income for federal purposes, New York says, we'll let you make the rest of those deductions for New York purposes, because they decouple from the federal legislation. So that's a really good thing. But you also have to consider the other taxes that are levied at, on the sales tax sort of side at the cultivator level and the dispensary level. Which
it seems like New York is doing a lot of things right, except actually giving out their licenses right now. I mean, the way that they decriminalized it, and you can consume cannabis on the streets of Manhattan right now, or wherever you can consume cigarettes. The taxes and the diversity, equality, and inclusion acts that they've provided, it seems like literally they're doing everything right except for shutting down the gray market and actually handing out the licenses
to shut it down.
It's
a very difficult thing, especially when you're dealing with New York. New York has done a lot of good things. They passed the legislation. They've given out the adult use conditional cultivator licenses. There was a couple hundred of those. They just a couple of weeks ago gave out the first of the, I think it was about 30 of the social equity fund licensees. There's going to be 150 total, and each of those licensees are going to get some revenue from each of those companies are going to get some of that fund to help build out their dispensaries, and they're going to have other support. So New York has really good intentions to get this done, even though there's been a lot of press and a lot of complaints that it's taking so long. But it's a complicated set of facts and laws, and it's a complicated business. And New York is really trying to learn from the mistakes and the issues from other states and really put in the best practice possible.
So I'm going to stereotype you here for a second, because I haven't asked you. I'm assuming you're a New Yorker.
I am a New Yorker.
I can tell from the accent.
I grew up in Queens. I lived in the city for a while, and now I'm in Long Island.
So I'm from New Jersey, so you probably look down upon me. I understand that. I apologize. I apologize for being on the other side of the bridge or the tunnels.
I would never look down at you.
But I often say on this show, and I'd love to get your opinion as a New Yorker, that when this industry reaches parity, maturity, whatever you want to call it, even 5 years from now, I believe that New York will be the biggest cannabis market in the world, and it will be bigger than California.
Absolutely. I'm 100% behind that statement.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a huge industry. In New York, when you're dealing with all of the tourism in
Yeah.
itself, okay, when you walk around Times Square on a regular day, even as someone that lives there, and you see that the streets are packed with people and the amount of just the volume of the population there, there's no way this is not going to be the biggest market ever.
And you have California that, they think last revenue was like 4 or 5 billion. Like I see New York, in my opinion, it would be New York, California, Florida are going to be 1, 2, and 3.
I agree with you.
Okay, cool. Well, see, I know what I'm talking
I
about.
want to talk about. I know you're probably winding this up, but
I was just trying to make sure you can get on stage, but
you said something that I just want to bring up. You were talking about the fact that when you're dealing with entrepreneurs, like how they think of ways to do things like the credit card payment processor. So another reason I was attracted to this industry is because of that reason. But not just dealing with the cannabis companies and the operators themselves. I love to deal with like the software, the new people that are developing software solutions, because they're all coming together and like they're developing these new techniques and these new ways to do things. And you have engineers writing programs and doing all these wonderful things to help with the regulatory tracking, to help with the point of sale systems, to help with the, even the 280E calculations and things like that. All of these take very, very smart people. It takes like sometimes using robotics and artificial intelligence to really optimize. And you're seeing the best of technology solutions too. So I love that part of that. And from the tax side, I also can help those companies, because a lot of times with software development, these companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars getting engineers to build out their systems, and blood and sweat and everything else that they do. When you're a startup company, even without revenue, if you're developing software, there's federal R&D tax credits that I can help companies get that can help monetize all that time, even if they're pre-revenue. If they could put it against their payroll.
And this is what I love about the industry, right? Because I do believe, because so many mainstay companies couldn't enter the industry because of federal illegality, that there has been a ton of innovation and stuff that has been specifically designed for this industry and then reverse engineering out into other industries.
That's correct.
And I'm very happy to see folks like you, and excuse me for saying it this way, that the adults came into the room and you're showing us like, hey, you guys are doing great and we love the creativity, and we're going to make sure that you're doing it the right way and help you.
Developing a new vape device, developing a new technique to grow a new fertilizer. All of these companies that are not necessarily subject to 280, they're not hands-on, they're not plant touching themselves, but they're developing techniques that can either be used in the industry or similar industries. They're amazing, and they can really, they're solving a problem that is bigger and broader than they can even imagine. So it's wonderful.
Folks, I've said this one time, I've said it again. If you want to quicken your path to profitability, you need someone optimizing your taxes. It's just what it is, right? Listen, at the end of the day, the government's going to try to get as much as they can from you, and you need somebody on your side. So
it's not just taxes, though. You need good financial statements if you want investors.
Oh, you sure do.
You need all of that stuff. So
no, like I said, we need the adults in the room to show us how to talk to the people who can help us continue.
An adult during the daytime.
I'm trying to, but you have about 6 minutes before you need to get on stage.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Jill, for joining me.
Absolutely.
Take care.